For years, it felt like we were stuck in this weird vortex where every first-person shooter was either a clone of Call of Duty, Half-Life, or Halo. However, thanks to the success of Doom in 2016, game developers both big and small realized that there's a real market for fast-paced, old-school twitchy shooters, or boomer shooters if you prefer. One of the most intriguing examples of this phenomenon is Chains of Fury by XIII Games, an episodic, first-person shooter that takes elements from XIII, Lobo, and Duke Nukem 3D. It's a fun and stylish new action game that should scratch that old-school itch. But is the whole thing completely undone by a spate of game-breaking bugs? Well, that's what we're about to find out in this review of Chains of Fury Volume 1. When XIII Games announced Chains of Fury as a Kickstarter project back in 2021, they called it a Metroidvania boomer shooter inspired by Hellboy and Lobo comics with cel-shaded graphics pulled straight out of XIII and gameplay reminiscent of Duke Nukem 3D. Well, apparently that was enough well-known names and influences to convince people to back the project, turning this intriguing game into a crowdfunding success story. Now all the developers needed to do was release the game in the third quarter of 2022, like they promised. Obviously, that didn't happen. Here we are, 2 years later, and we're finally getting that first installment, appropriately dubbed Volume 1. This includes the first 8 stages, which are comprised of 6 linear levels and 2 large-scale boss fights. The Metroidvania elements have been cut in favor of making a more traditional first-person shooter, and some of the other promises made in the Kickstarter have either been scrapped or delayed for a future installment. Yeah, that's disappointing, but hey, at least the game's finally out, and that's the important part. Now, for a game where the whole conceit is that you're playing a comic book, there's surprisingly little story or setup here. I'm not even sure the game tells us the hero's name. The Steam page tells us that he's a hired gun who's furious after a former client gets him thrown in prison. Out for revenge, the assassin must break out of prison and fight his way through underground caves and volcanoes for some reason in order to find the man who stole his money and freedom. Equipped with little more than a chain that he can use as a grappling hook and a proficiency at pretty much every weapon he picks up, the hired gun fights through endless waves of cops, robots, mutants, mushroom men, and pigs dressed up as security guards. He's pissed off, and it's easy to see why. He doesn't just open up doors, he literally kicks them straight into the next room, killing everything in his path. Just blood and guts flying everywhere. It's glorious. The truth is, I was completely won over by the game's over-the-top brutality right from the start. Even if I didn't know the assassin's name, I knew that I liked seeing mutants and mushroom men burst into a fountain of gore every time I shot them. There's a gleeful excess to everything in this game that'll immediately remind you of the 1990s, and not just because the cel-shaded bad guys are all two-dimensional. With the throwback style, violent anti-hero, and extreme gore, it's easy to see why this Kickstarter succeeded. The nice thing is that it doesn't just look the part, but it also plays like those classic games. This is fast-paced, with waves of enemies coming from all sides. It controls well, and even gives you a nice selection of weapons to choose from, including a shotgun, flamethrower, grenade launcher, crossbow, and more. You'll also be able to upgrade your hands, allowing you to punch through stronger doors and even certain walls. There are also hidden passages that can only be opened with certain weapons, as well as a whole bunch of secret areas filled with treasure. The developer has made a lot of smart decisions along the way, especially when it comes to the level designs and how you interact with the different stages. Let me tell you, when Chains of Fury works, it's an absolute blast. It's fast, and it's fun, and it's everything you want from a throwback shooter. The problem this game has is that it doesn't always work. In fact, I think it's fair to call it broken. And it's not in the typical ways either, because this game is broken in ways that you probably haven't even considered. For one thing, the game simply refused to load with my antivirus program turned on. I don't know if it's because the game loads into its own shell and that's conflicting with my antivirus scanner, but the game simply refused to load until I turned it off. And even when the game finally loaded properly, you're still in store for dozens more bugs and glitches. I ran into the issue of the game loading up without any sound. I also found that my save file got corrupted when I was trying to get it to load again, so I had to play the first few stages all over. And did I mention that this game has a bad problem of freezing at weird times? At first I thought it was because I killed too many enemies at once and my computer just couldn't keep up. But then it also froze when nothing was happening, so I'm inclined to believe that it's the game's problem, not mine. But wait, we're just getting started. Some bugs will literally leave you stranded. For example, if you open the gate before you manually save the game, you'll reload to find that the gate is shut, with no way to open it again. One of the major issues that Chains of Fury has is that the walls aren't always as solid as they should be. It's surprisingly easy to accidentally back up and fall right out of the level. Now look, I can forgive this happening once or twice, but this happened dozens of times. I could spend the next 10 minutes doing nothing more than cutting together a montage of me falling through the level, but you get the point. Another thing I noticed is that the frame rate takes a real dip in the game's last act. I didn't have a problem with the frame rate for most of the levels, but it really goes to hell in the final few stages, let me tell you. Also, either the final boss is the easiest enemy in the entire game, or it's glitched and gave me an easy win. I'm serious, I was genuinely floored when I beat this game. After the challenge of the previous boss, the big bad at the end puts up absolutely no fight. I'm still a little convinced that it was a glitch, because there's no way that it was designed to be this easy. Now, even if Cobble Games is somehow able to resolve all of these issues through patches, that's still not gonna fix the samey level designs. I don't know if it's because the game is episodic, but Volume 1 feels like 4 great levels stretched across 8 stages. I also take issue with the way that they're selling the game. Stuck looking for an exit, the game asks? The solution? Just punch through walls and then shoot the suckers behind them. I don't know about you, but this makes it sound like the levels are fully destructible. It suggests that you don't even need to follow the path, just make a new one by punching through walls. But, yeah, that's not how it works. Yes, there are a few destructible walls here and there, but they're all built right into the mostly linear path and are basically just variations on doors. I mean, look, I get it that there are a few shortcuts here and there, but this is misleading, and it makes the game sound like Red Faction, a game where you literally could tunnel through the environments. These problems are especially frustrating because there's a really fun core game hidden behind all these technical issues. I beat the game and immediately wanted to play Volume 2 because the fast-paced action is fun and it does a remarkably good job of capturing what made Duke Nukem 3D so iconic. This has a lot of the right ingredients, but the potential is being overshadowed by the bugs and the inherent problems associated with episodic games. I don't know. Here's hoping that everything comes together for Chains of Fury Volume 2. The spirit of Duke Nukem 3D is strong in the new game Chains of Fury, a throwback first-person shooter inspired by everything from Lobo to XIII to Hellboy. This first volume gives us 8 fast-paced levels full of twitch shooting and two-dimensional bad guys. It has stylish, cel-shaded graphics and enough guts and gore to satisfy anybody's bloodthirst. Unfortunately, all the potential is completely undone by a laundry list of technical bugs and glitches. From loading without sound, to freezing, to falling right through the level, this game is busted, and that's even before you get to the dubious way the game is being advertised. Sure, there are moments when Chains of Fury really shines, but it's hard to recommend something that has this many game-breaking bugs. Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite old school first-person shooter? Oh man, there were so many great first-person shooters back in the 1990s, back when EGM would call them Doom clones no matter if they were or not. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, my schedule is all screwed up because somebody decided to hack the Internet Archive. You see, I wanted to post a Castlevania Review Crew episode last Friday, but as it turns out, the Internet Archive is pretty much the only place that has the edge issues that I need. This is really backing things up, so expect to see a whole bunch of Review Crew episodes in a row to compensate. Hopefully, we'll be able to get to at least 2 of them this week, 3 if the archive comes back. Why wait for that? I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.